Today I'm going to moderate this Q&A session, and more or less we have around 1 to 1.5 hours to talk about your works. And before that, I would like to welcome all filmmakers that join us today. I would like to start with Aswang. It's a film made by Alex Ain Arumpak. Is that correct to pronounce
Yes.
your name?
Yes.
Yeah. And Malditos, produced by Elena Guatelli and Anja Esteban. Welcome to our Q&A session. Thank you. And the third one, The Whale from Lorino, Masic Kuske. Am I correct to pronounce your name?
Maciej.
Maciej.
Suske.
Maciej. Thank you. And the last one, film called Yugong by Daniel Kota. Is that correct to pronounce your name?
Correct, yes.
Yes, thank you. So today, more or less, is kind of not necessarily complicated Q&A session. We rather thought about how we are going to talk about your films, context, and your standpoints in your works. So before that, I would like to acknowledge by mentioning your bio. Start from Aswang. So Aswang, Alex Aina Tumpak is a Filipina documentary filmmaker. She received a Master in Documentary Filmmaking from the Doc Nomads Erasmus Mundus, Master Course, Portugal, Hungary, and Belgium, and a Bachelor in Film at the University of the Philippines. She directs and produces short documentaries for the Top TV network in Manila. She is in post-production of her feature film, Aswang. And the second one, Malditos. I'm so sorry, but I have to mention this for this session. Elena Guatelli, born in Bolzano, Italy in 1975. After her degree in American Literature at Ca' Foscari University, she won the Leonardo Fellowship and started to work at documentary film department in Canal in Spain. Since then, she never stopped working and investigating in documentary narratives. Anja Esteban, born in Madrid, Spain in 1976. After image and directing studies, he started to work as the OP in different projects, including doc series, documentary films, theater, and music performances. This wide range of experiences emerged in his job as director and editor. Elena Guatelli and Angel Esteban founded Gotham Films in 2012. Since then, they never stopped exploring new narratives and subjects, moved by a deep sense of curiosity and need of expression. They usually direct together, merging their fictional visions of life into their films. Among their filmography, 1 Minute for Conductors will premiere at IDFA in 2015, and Tom 2015, the film about the British alpinist Tom Ballard, winner of more than 10 international awards. Malditos just premiered in Italy, Spain, Colombia, UK, Best Directing Award at Sinalfama Award Festival in Lisbon, Portugal. They're ending the post-production process of the last film, My Upside Down World about Ice Climber champion, Angelica Reiner. Elena and Angel live halfway between Italian Alps and Madrid. And the third one, The Whale from Lorino, Maciej, filmmaker dedicated to independent film and music videos. In 2004, he finished Andres Vaida Film School and has been creating documentary cinema since. His main subject is plain life, where he looks for humor and warmth in the surrounding reality, regardless of it being far away of just outside his window, and he aims to find the cinema in life. He conducts workshops for young cinematographers across Poland, and since 2007 is a part of his hometown's Bydgoszcz Film Chronicles, a place for the young and creative people. He is member of the board of experts in the Polish Film Institute since 2009 and has been the head of the documentary course in Warsaw Film School since 2012. And the fourth one, I think it's a bit long, then I will just a bit shorten it, if that's okay, for this introduction. Yugong, produced by Daniel Kotter. He is an international filmmaker and music theater director. His works alternate between different media and institutional contexts and combine experimental film techniques with performative and documentary elements. They have been shown worldwide at numerous film and video art festivals in galleries, theaters, and concert halls. His major works include the music theater trilogies Falsch Arbeit, Falsch Freizeit, sorry for my pronunciation, Freizeit Spectacle, Credit Recht Liebe, and Stadland Fluss, 2017-2019, all with Hannes Seidel. The multi-channel trilogy Arbeit und Freizeit, 2009-2011, as well as the film, performance, and discourse series State Theater about the urban conditions of performativity in the cities of Lagos, Tehran, Berlin, Detroit, Beirut, Mönchengladbach, 2009 to 2014 with Constant Fischbach. So I'll skip the second part. I'll go to the last one. In 2017, 2020, he worked on the documentary film trilogy Hashti Tehran, 2017, Desert View, 2018, and Reef Finfine, 2020, about urban peripheries in Tehran, Cairo, and Addis Ababa. Hashti Tehran won the Special Award of the German Short Film Award. Daniel Kota is currently working on a series of spatial performances and 360 films on the landscape and social consequences of extractivism in Germany, West Papua, DR Congo, Estonia, under the title Lanskap in Bodies. I hope you don't mind that I mention all the bios, but I think it's important to acknowledge all of us here. So I would like to remind you, my name is Vicky. So today I'm going to moderate this session. So I would like to start maybe with a very simple question. Previously, the programmers team attempted to divide two sessions. So actually we're gonna have one other session which is called personal struggle. So currently we're having this session called collective struggles. So I will unpack this concept later on, and before that I would like to invite actually all of you to talk a little bit more about the context of the film. So what kind of context that you're trying to reveal through your works. And I believe it is also important for our viewers to know more about the context behind the film itself. So maybe I would like to give this mic, this virtual mic, to Malditos. So maybe we could start with Elena and Angel, if that's okay.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, maybe. So since we have time limitation, maybe 5 minutes is okay for you, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank
to
you,
be.
thank you.
What do we want to start?
Yes, about the context, we start to shoot Malditos. We start to shoot we start the pre-production in 2015.
Yes, it's 5 years ago. It was in November, and we knew two of the actors of the Malditos company.
There were, sorry, the end of the economical crisis.
In Europe, so they were struggling to keep on with their theater performance, and well, they contacted us because they wanted to tell their story. That was another one, like a backstage about the performance, but we understand immediately that their personal life and personal struggles as individuals and also as collective, as a theater company, have similitude with the performance they were representing, because it's inspired in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And the film about by Sidney Pollack. So we started a very long process with them, asking to shoot themselves in their daily life, and to think and to analyze how the performance they were settling was influencing their personal feelings and dynamic between the companion.
Because the performance was like a real competition on the stage. So for 3 years,
yes,
they
have been struggling on the stage between them without knowing who was to be the winner couple. So at the beginning, the collective dream of being successful was fulfilled because they had a great success. But we keep on shooting after the prize they won, and we saw how the tensions and also the success was changing their way to interact between them. So after 3 years of collecting these materials, these personal materials shooted by phone, we have a lot of materials. We were
Skype interviews.
Yes.
At the beginning was like research material for us, but at the end we decided that there were the very good material to create
the narrative.
The narrative, yeah.
So after 3 years, we achieved to have the fund and to start shooting the performance. We asked them to come to the theater, and we started the shooting. There were just 3 days, but they didn't know that we have also a camera to shoot in between the acts, between the part, no? So
yeah, like the backstage part. So
it was like a triumph. It was like the end of their performance tournée. The group was already falling apart, but we arrived just at the moment. So we were able to shoot also that kind of dynamics in the backstage of the performance. And then it has been a very long process, of course, of editing, because we have 3 levels to put together: the personal life, backstage, and performance. So it has been a very long process till this year that we had our premiere. And by the way, thank you for having Malditos at your festival. It was
Thank you. Okay. Oh, well, it is really interesting to see how this performance and personal testimonies somehow not we cannot really differentiate which one is fiction, which one is fact. I think, but I'll come back to that later on. Thank you very much for your explanation. Then I think we're gonna move on to Alex in Arumpak. Would you like to tell us a bit more about the context of your work?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Afternoon. Morning. So the film started in 2016. The Philippines by a majority, Rodrigo Duterte was voted president of the Philippines. And during his campaign, he had promised that he would be getting rid of crime and well, petty crime and drugs in the streets, and would even promise, you know, state words or sentences like, I will make the fish go fat in Manila Bay with the bodies of drug users, etc. And he won despite this by a landslide, which says a lot about the Filipinos as well. Yes, and then soon after, on the day that he was voted, even before, when he was proclaimed winner, the killings already started. So little by little, news of executions and body dumps in the city, in the capital, Manila, started. And this was the entry point of my research. This is how I started. I went on a night shift, and it lasted for a couple of years, going after news of crime scenes and bodies. And Aswang was basically based on this process. But of course, we followed up on stories and then eventually traced how Filipinos embraced this kind of violence. And the sad thing is, okay, the film started in 2016 and it is still ongoing. The killings are still happening, even with the pandemic going around. President Duterte is still very popular in the Philippines. Yes, that is the context of my film.
Thank you very much for sharing that context, which might be a bit difficult to share or to illustrate it. I don't. Anyway, thank you very much. And now I'm moving on to Machi, the whale from Lorino. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Would you like to tell us a bit more about the context of your film? How did you start this film and why and so on?
Tak? Znaczy chyba zrozumiałem.
Nie, zrozumiałeś, dobra.
Dobrze. No więc pierwszą taką ideą mojego filmu to było zetknięcie się tego wieloryba i człowieka. I to była taka pierwsza moja myśl, że te zetknięte dwa światy, ginące akurat w tym miejscu, znaczy wieloryby giną w ogóle na planecie, a w tym miejscu kultura czukocka gdzieś zniknęła. Pomyślałem, że to będzie temat filmu. I bardzo trudno było i marzyłem, żeby zobaczyć to miejsce. To było moje marzenie, zacząć wieloryba i zobaczyć czukotkę. To może najpierw. Tak, bo tak chyba takimi krótkimi zdaniami.
Okay, so Macie's work with film, it began with the thought on the encounter between two disappearing worlds, the world of whales and the world of men. And he had always dreamed about seeing that place, seeing the Chukchi Peninsula and the whales.
Czukocja to jest rejon Rosji, to jest koniec euroazjatyckiego kontynentu, bardzo daleko. I też to jest taki rejon osobny, na który nawet Rosjanie potrzebują osobnej wizy. Więc dla nas, dla Polaków, to było jeszcze trudniejsze. Więc bardzo długo, film powstawał 6 lat. Rok mniej więcej starałem się o to, żeby w ogóle tam pojechać pierwszy raz, zobaczyć to miejsce, bo o tym miejscu prawie nic nie można przeczytać. Szczątkowe informacje.
The place, the Chukchi Peninsula, is very specific. It's like the end of Russia, and it is very far away for Russian, and it works as a special region. So even the Russian citizens, they have to have a visa. And for for Polish people, it's even more difficult, or any other foreigner. So it took Maciej 6 years to make this movie, and just 1 year he was waiting for the permission to enter this place for the first time.
Pierwszy raz byłem miesiąc na dokumentacji. Ta dokumentacja pozwoliła mi zrealizować trailer do filmu i zrozumieć, jaki film chcę zrobić. Poznałem jakichś ludzi w tym miejscu, zobaczyłem ten świat. To pozwoliło właśnie zrobić trailer i na podstawie tego udało mi się w ciągu 2 lat zebrać pieniądze na realizację filmu. Z Mediadesk, z telewizji, z Polskiego Instytutu Sztuki Filmowej. No i z takim jeszcze niepełnym, ale już budżetem wyruszyliśmy na zdjęcia, które trwały 2 miesiące. W 2015 roku były właściwe zdjęcia. No i potem po powrocie bardzo długo, no dobra, i po powrocie trwał długo montaż.
So for the first time he went to the set for 1 month just to make a trailer and to seek funds for further filming. It took him 2 years to gather the funds from some Polish national funds and from the media. And finally, he has been shooting for 2 months in 2015, and then editing also took forever.
I na koniec no, byliśmy 4-osobową ekipą, czyli operator, dźwiękowiec, no, moja pomocniczka, no, Rosjanka, która wiele lat mieszkała już w Polsce, no i ja, reżyser. I mieliśmy kamerę Ursa, która mogła filmować obraz w 4K, tylko to nie była taka duża jeszcze Ursa. No dobra. Okay,
dobra. So the team was, it was a 4-people team. 1 DOP, sound mixer, and an assistant who was Russian, and Maciej as a director.
O dźwiękowcu powiedziałeś, tak? Przepraszam.
Yep.
No to chyba wszystko.
That would be it. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Anja. So now I'm going to Daniel, who produced UCOM. Daniel?
Yes.
Yes.
First of all, hello everybody, and thank you very much for including my film into the festival. It's actually very sad that I cannot be in Jogja right now because, funny enough, I was supposed to be in Jogja this very week to present my project Golden Coal, which is a performance and 360-degree documentary film project on mining in West Papua and in East Germany. So, but thanks to this pandemia, I'm sitting in Berlin and not in Jogja. Talking about the context of my film Yugong, the context of this film is quite different from the way I usually work. I prefer usually to have a very clear case study and a clear idea about the film before I even start. But in this case, the film is based on a 5-year-long research that is connected to a larger art and exhibition project that was initiated by writer and curator Jochen Becker on the Sino-African relations, so the encounter between China and different African countries. And we did a research in 9 different African countries. Only 6 of them end up in the film, and in China and Hong Kong. And the whole project actually led to an exhibition project that involved 40 African and Chinese artists, also some from Europe, as the outcome of working groups that we established with theoreticians and artists in Lagos in Nigeria, and Lubumbashi in Democratic Republic of Congo, Johannesburg, and in Guangzhou. but during this 5 year or 4 years of research, we would travel and exchange with different actors in this sort of Sino-African field. And I would have the camera with me all the time. So I just collected footage without having a clear idea how the film would look in the end, which partly also explains the form of the film, but yeah, I don't know, maybe we can talk later about that. So yes, so the context of that film, it's a film about this encounter, which is of course from the perspective of two European white male dudes, so to say, because when we started the project in 2013, it was a topic that was absolutely not discussed or in the media in Europe, and we had the impression that what's going on between China and different African countries will shape the economy and the way we deal with each other on this planet fundamentally, and will also force Europe finally to reposition themselves after 500 years of coloniality, which was dominated by Europe. So on one hand, the project represents, of course, our perspective, what we saw while traveling, while researching, but on the other hand, it is also the outcome of a project that involved and collaborated with quite a number of African and Chinese researchers and artists.
Thank you, Daniel, for your explanation about the context. And now I would like to go back to the way this session is framed. As I mentioned earlier, that the programmers team is trying to pull out this theme, which is called collective struggle. Of course, you might not see each other films, but we're trying to find an outline among the film which are produced by filmmakers here in this session. And what I mean by collective struggle, collective struggle is how this film could touch certain themes which are not necessarily restricted to the question of personal interest. In that sense, the question that I would like to address is how the dynamics or the position of this collective attempt, which is manifested on your works. And for now, I would like to approach it with the contradictions that exist on your works. So maybe I would like to go back to Anja and Esteban, since maybe I'll explain a little bit about your work to other filmmakers. So Elena and Anja produced a film called Malditos. So the way I read it, this is a tension between performance, competition, and personal testimonies, which is also at the same time became a reflection of this competition. And to relate this, to connect this to the context that you mentioned earlier, could you also tell us a bit more about what kind of contradiction that you're trying to reveal or expose, or you might have different language to call this other than exposing or reveal? So please, Elena and Angel, if you...
Okay. For us, one of the important things about Malditos, it's like the stage it's like a metaphor of our society. In one way or another, almost all our films talk about success and failure in different ways, not so explicitly like Malditos, because it's the main point, but it's a reflection about the society where even when you achieve a goal, you must continue. You must start from zero every time to demonstrate that you have you win your own battle in that moment. Okay. In this case, it's interesting the balancing between the real life and the stage life, fiction and reality. We like very much this confusion about what is reality, what is fiction, and the contradiction between the group as a group or collective and the individual personality of each of these characters, because as a collective they fight together to research a goal. But then after 3 years, when each character starts to have their own personal success, the group starts to fall apart. So
it's yes, it was like a similitude about the importance of the collective when these people, these actors were ruined, personal and economical. They find a unique the support of each other to fight for the same goal. At the moment, then they started to improve their personal life. The collective started to be less important. So the individual struggle and the clashes between them started to. So we saw similitude with society, also with the need of society to fight for your own interest, or like it's the capitalism and like it's structured. You are on your own way every time, even if you can make some part of your journey together with other people, but it's very difficult to stay and to find a way to pursue it and to keep things together and keep people together. And also during all these film and shooting and everything, we always had the impression that we can be on the stage with them, and that every people can be on the stage running again and again. Also after something that seems a victory, it's never the end of the struggle. You have to go and start again. And it was very strong when we started, because the effect of the economic crisis in Europe was very, very strong. And also actors has always lived like that, like having no chance of working. And now after with this pandemic, looking back at Malditos seems like heaven. They were poor, but they had the opportunity to be on the stage. Now there's no opportunity to act. So different type of crisis, but yes, we are still we're still there.
See, thank you for sharing us about that. Of course the film talks about that, but I'm trying to approach this with contradictions and trying to tie this to other filmmakers' works here. And now you mentioned a lot about crisis, competition, and now I think I would like to go to Alex with Aswang. It's a sad story, and it talks about state violence, and I'm curious to know more as well about how is it going now in the Philippines, and what kind of contradictions that you're trying to reveal through this through Aswa?
I wasn't very sure. I was thinking about contradictions in the film, and I wasn't really sure if there was anything I could lift. But probably one thing that also puzzles me and has always puzzled me is that Filipinos are a very generally a Catholic nation. We are the only Catholic nation, I think, in Southeast Asia, for instance. And many of us have grown up this way. God-fearing, etc., etc. But what always puzzles me about Filipinos as well is that despite this, despite religion and despite spirituality, you would say, and that I think comes out in the film heavily, not just because the protagonist works in the church, but it just comes out. It puzzles me why people also support these kinds of killings, and such a murderous policy, and support very enthusiastically that how much you would say, how much they would be saying, the people who would be saying, yes, kill them, you know, the people who are very loud on social media, for instance, are also the ones that would put in their profile, I am a God-fearing person. So I think this is probably the most, the strangest and most extreme contrast that I have seen and I have witnessed during this research for this film.
How did I mean? Is it something which become popular, or the contradiction between Catholicism and the state itself? I'm just wondering because I have no enough knowledge about the Philippine context. Maybe you could also
the church is very powerful in the Philippines, and church and state are usually very linked together, and in fact, of course, when the killings first started, I think the religious organizations in the Philippines also did not know at first how to approach this, because you know, they usually support the government. So it was everyone was really unsure about how to go about this, and you know, to believe this. Something that is also interesting to point out is that like the rest of the world right now, it has made the Philippines very polarized. This particular leader, President Duterte, really splits a lot of people on opinion, because for some reason many, I don't know why, but really support him, and even these very religious people would support him, which puzzles me. And I think that film in these times really exposes this kind of black and white in our society. And what I had always tried to approach in the film is, you know, to say that there's gray areas in this. There is gray areas in this conversation. It is not just black and white. A person is not evil just because he does drugs, or you know, these kinds of conversation, because this is what is happening. This is how the government is saying, if a person does drugs, he is evil, he is a criminal immediately and deserves to be killed. This is something that we are trying to change.
Okay,
in at least in the film.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for the talk about contradiction. I think it somehow resonates to, of course, with different contexts, to the Angel and Esteban's work, but later on we would discuss that a little bit more. And now we move on to Machi. Machi, would you like to also share us about the contradiction that you're trying to show through the scarcity of whale hunting, and maybe the question revolving around scarcity of economy. Maciej?
To ja może powiem, przetłumaczę. Tam była mowa o tym, żebyś przedstawił kontrasty, czy jakieś opozycje, polaryzacje, które pojawiły się w twoim filmie. I to dodatkowo było zadane w kontekście o tych polaryzacjach polowań na wieloryby i może ekonomii.
Ojej, to jest bardzo dużo. Może powiem tak, że Czukotka to jest... Na Czukotce przez setki lat, właśnie tysiące lat, żyły małe społeczności rozłożone nad brzegiem Morza Czukotskiego i Cieśniny Beringa. I właściwie przez cały okres panowania, nie wiem, Rosji, w takiej dawnej, carskiej, a potem właściwie do 1920 roku czy 30 oni żyli zupełnie sami, nikt im się nie mieszał, mimo że to była część Rosji. Gdy przyszedł Związek Radziecki, Stalin postanowił te tereny eksplorować, to znaczy korzystać z nich, bo to jest tak naprawdę skarbiec Rosji. Tam pod ziemią jest mnóstwo złóż bogatych minerałów, bardzo drogich, cennych. I postanowił tą część świata zawłaszczyć tak zupełnie. I zmienił ten świat Czukczom. Oni w ciągu 30 lat, ci Czukcze, którzy żyli w namiotach, radzili sobie z przyrodą, żyli w małych społecznościach, nagle stali się częścią cywilizacji. To może tak na początek.
Okay, so that's a huge question, and the issue is that the Chukchi people, they used to live outside really state influence up until 1920s and 1930s. So they were like very small societies of hunter-gatherers living by the sea. Later on in the 30s, when during the USSR period, Stalin decided to explore this peripheral area, and then the word of Chukchi has dramatically changed.
Na czym polegało życie takiej społeczności kiedyś? Każdy w wiosce spełniał swoją funkcję. Myśliwi, albo inaczej zdrowi mężczyźni polowali dla innych. Kobiety wychowywały dzieci, ale też spełniały takie funkcje gospodarcze. Starsi ludzie otaczali też opieką i dzieci, i też, nie wiem, pomagali we wszystkich pracach. Każdy człowiek w społeczności spełniał jakąś rolę i to stwarzało sens życia. Kiedy Związek Radziecki... no i to właśnie całe życie, każdy dzień to była cały czas praca. Nawet dzieci pracowały. Nosiły wodę, nosiły lód, roztapiały lód, śnieg, zbierały jajka ptasie. Każdy w tej społeczności pracował. I to wyznaczało sens życia.
Okay, so it was just like that previously everybody in the society had its own role based on age and gender, and that it was ordered. So all the people had their function, and up until the USSR arrived, this function within the working society pointed to the meaning of life.
Ten świat był również bogaty w duchowość. To jest ważne. To nie była taka prosta taka społeczność, która, nie wiem, którą na przykład można było wyśmiać, a Związek Radziecki to zrobił. Oni mieli ogromne bogactwo, nie wiem, wiedzy o duchach, o życiu duchowym. A kiedy przyszedł Stalin i tam wprowadził Rosjan, to nagle powiedziano Czukczom, że żyją w zacofaniu, że cały świat już się zmienia, że nie ma Boga, że nie ma duchów. Szamani to są oszuści. To jest ważne, że szamani, no, trzeba ich wybić, zabić albo zapędzić do łagrów, a na Czukotce czas postawić nowy porządek, socjalistyczny świat, szczęście, radość, pracę, przemysł, prąd, również alkohol.
Okay. So another important thing is that it was a word based on rich spirituality, the spirituality that cannot be easily mocked. So Chukchi people used to have a deep knowledge about spiritual life or about spiritual beings, and the USSR intended to mock this world or to frame it as backwarded, and they portrayed shamans as liars and as traitors that should be killed or imprisoned. So they introduced this new order of socialism, happiness, industrialization, and also alcohol.
Czukczy uwierzyli, to były małe społeczności, oni uwierzyli w ten nowy świat. I w ciągu 30 lat z epoki, to mówią Czukcze, z epoki kamienia łupanego oni weszli na poziom cywilizacji. I rzeczywiście ich życie, ich praca zamieniła się w pracę w kołchozach. Tak stworzono kołchozy, przedsiębiorstwa. Zabroniono im polować na wieloryby. Za to robiły to za nich wielkie rosyjskie łodzie. A dlaczego zabroniono im polować? Bo to była część ich kultury. Postanowiono całą kulturę stłamsić, zniszczyć. Oni stali się takimi Rosjanami tylko drugiej kategorii. I przez jakiś czas, przez ileś lat to funkcjonowało. Oni dostali pracę, dostali prąd, dostali ciepłe domy zamiast namiotów. Ale Związek Radziecki przede wszystkim szybko zrozumiał, że to jest nieopłacalne i to zaczęło upadać. A kiedy Związek Radziecki się rozpadł, to oni przez 20 lat po prostu głodowali, bo nowa Rosja o nich zapomniała i tam mnóstwo ludzi umarło na tym wybrzeżu, a Czukcze musieli nauczyć się na nowo polować, żeby przetrwać. Na wieloryby przede wszystkim.
So the problem was that initially the Chukchi people very much believed in the opportunities that communism brought them. So in their own words, they moved from the Stone Age to civilization, and they believed in this new opportunities that work in the industry has provided. So they were also banned from hunting for whales because now there were special companies that would in a large scale hunt for whales. So the culture was destroyed, and they became second class Russians. And for a while it was working because they were satisfied with the new work, with the fact that they have electricity, or they moved from yurts to brick houses. But in the end of the USSR, and after it, especially after it fell down, the new Russia has forgot about Chukchi people. So they had suffered from famine, and a lot of people had died, and they had to learn to hunt once again.
Dzisiejsza Rosja pozwala na przywrócenie trochę tej kultury, nie trochę, pozwala na przywrócenie tej kultury I przede wszystkim pozwala im na odławianie wielorybów, ale oni, żeby było jasne, Rosja pozwala na jakąś określoną kwotę. Co roku ta kwota jest sprawdzana i pilnowana. To jest około 150 wielorybów na całe wybrzeże, czyli na całą Czukotkę, która jest ogromna. Ale tam ludzi jest niewiele tak naprawdę na tej Czukotce. Jeśli dobrze pamiętam, to około 50 000 w ogóle Rosjan i Czukczów tam zamieszkuje. I oni mogą odłowić 150 wielorybów. I teraz dla porównania, Norwegia odławia kilkaset wielorybów, od 300 do 500. Japonia około 800 wielorybów. Dania, czyli na Wyspach Owczych, odławia się około 800 wielorybów co roku. To są, i mówię o krajach, które są wysoko uprzemysłowione i gospodarczo zabezpieczone. Na Czukotce nie można nic wyhodować. Nie można hodować zwierząt. Poza tym mówię, polowanie to jest część ich kultury. To przywraca im godność, że oni mogą sami sobie zapracować na swoje życie. Więc tym się różni jakby polowanie na wieloryby na Czukotce od tych krajów, które robią to no właściwie nielegalnie.
Tutaj kończymy, tak?
Tak.
Dobra. So today's Russia, to a limited extent, it allows the revival of Chukchi culture, and they are allowed to hunt for whales, but in a very limited amount of them. The limitation is on 150 whales a year, which is not enough for this vast terrain and for this vast society of around 50,000 people. And to compare it with other Western countries, like for example Japan, they hunt for 800 whales a year, or similarly Denmark. But that's like industrial thing, and in Chukchi Peninsula, it's rather a part of cultural identity. And with this, thanks.
Thank you, Machi, for sharing that. It is also interesting to see how well from Malditos we talk about competition, and Aswang talks about state violence and how religious institutions also support that state violence. And now we, once we come to the well from Lorino, we can also see how the culture is destroyed by modernity or so-called capitalism. And from that, I would like to go to Yugong. It is also interesting to see how this utopian vision from this Sino-African friendship. And Daniel, would you like to also share us a little bit more about how do you see the contradictions that you're dealing with, the reality in your films now?
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, it's always a bit strange to hear so much about films that you have not seen, but I have to say that I'm really curious to get to know all of your films by now. So this time it worked the other way around, that talking made me curious. Talking about contradictions in the film Yugong, I mean, probably the main contradiction that is explored in the film is the contradiction between the history of that continent that is really like not influenced but eaten up by decades and centuries of colonialism, and also the prolonged coloniality of state influence of colonial countries, and also private actors on an economic base. On one hand, which is still inscribed in a lot of institution infrastructure, even the bodies and the social relations on that continent. And on the other side, the so-called, let's say, new opportunities that are opened on many levels. And one of those levels is for sure the possibility to have a new partner let's say, which is in that case China that gives low interest loans, China that builds infrastructure for prices that Western companies would not agree on. So they produce things that are designed for the African market and for the African needs, and also on a very individual business opportunity basis due to the easy visa process in China for African traders compared to the really restrictive policies that Europe has towards that. It opens up possibilities, at least in the beginning of this whole story, it opened up a lot of possibilities for individual businesses to start and start their own trade and business between China and Africa. But that, of course, is only the preliminary contradiction, because then immediately the next contradiction would arise, which is the contradiction that, again, on many levels, different African countries and societies would enter in an asymmetric relationship, because, I mean, there is no doubt, and we should not have any illusions, that this is yet another asymmetric power relation. I mean, China has a geostrategic interest in collaborating and working with Africa, and so there would be other dependencies between Africa and yet another player. So these are contradictions that all the African states, but also all the individual actors are in. And based on that, maybe there's a third contradiction, which is how to tell this story. Especially for European filmmakers, but also for African players and Chinese players. How can we conceptualize what is right now going on? I mean, especially in the West, people immediately talk about neocolonialism, which I'm quite critical about that term. Because, I mean, it compares what's happening right now to what happened the last 500 years. And I think there is a new quality in what's happening right now. So we should maybe find at least other words, but also other ways of talking about it, conceptualizing it, and telling the story. And maybe it's no longer the turn, and that's the contradictions that the West has, or the Europeans has, is no longer the turn of the Europeans to tell that story of what is happening there, which is one of the reasons why the film decides to apply this this old Chinese fable Yugong, which is retold in the film several times in different African languages and also in Chinese. And it's also one of the reasons why I decided to keep a sort of fragmented structure for the film. So the film is a journey from through the African continent, from Algeria down to Mozambique, and then jumps in the last part to China. Because also I do not feel myself in the position to tell the one story. So the only form that was left for me is the form of a sort of a journey diary through the continent that first of all tries to observe rather than conceptualize or narrate the story, because all the narrations that were done about the story of that continent were the ones that sold modernity and actually brought atrocities.
Thank you, Daniel. I would like to apologize as well, because I put you all together with different films that you might be not familiar with as well. But this session is meant to be a companion later on the website. So it's going to be recorded, and the viewers could also see this, so to speak, Q&A session, because we can really have Q&A session. So I would like to apologize for that. And since it's gonna be companion, so it's more or less designed as advanced information of the films, like the background stories, like the contradictions or what's happening with in the films. And now I would like to go back again. I mean, it is very interesting, and luckily Daniel becomes curious to see other filmmakers' works here. And maybe I think we are reaching the end of this session, and I would like to go with the last questions. So I would like to also give you space to state, to give statement to your film, or to declare what you're trying to say through this film. Of course, with also limitations and privileges, for example. And maybe I would like to go to Elena and Angel. Is my question quite clear?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
So this is your time, and I would like to give you space to
Okay.
feel free to share what you're trying to say through this film, and what is your standpoint towards this reality that you have framed. So feel free.
Okay. I must to say that for me at the beginning, the most interesting thing was to try to combine these three levels, narrative levels, in an absolutely different way we used to work. So if I'm honest, I must to say that the form at the beginning for me was the most important thing. Not, yes, of course, because you have a group of people on the stage represent an old classic film by Sidney Pollack, and they are competing between them on the stage in a fiction. I mean, there's everything is there. It's not so complicated to create a narrative like that. It's complicated to mix all that levels. So for me, the most attractive thing was, okay, we can try to play, we can try to conform this monster narrative. It was like that, to very, very difficult.
Yes, it was totally new for us, because we usually work in a different way. We usually work with the camera and sound, and we go straight with the story. We find the character. It was like that for Tom, for example. We knew Tom and British Climber, and we started to shoot with him just immediately. We didn't have to look for funding, no. So Malditos was the first time we found with a very long development, and a very intellectual one also, to decide which levels could be part of the film. So it has been very tough. Above all, the part of the editing part, it was like mind-blowing a lot of time, because there was a lot of question, and it's very difficult for us also, I think, talking about statement, because I think there are so many levels. We hope there are so many levels in the film that every time we watch it, we find another key to understand. We hope that the Malditos, even if it's about actors and performance, we hope that symbolize our daily life also, and our challenges, and our way to like humans looking for happiness and dreams coming true. You know, it's like everybody has his own struggle, and our aspiration was to talk about universal stories through these actors. And also another very interesting point, that at the beginning, of course, actors are like other characters, but they are actors. So this level of fiction and reality for us also, it was like challenging, because we didn't know exactly if they were using us through the mobile footage to show, of course, the best of them. So it was like an exercise also to leave the control, to let the character have the control about their own narrative. And so it has been a challenge for us as directors, because we usually worked in another way. For us, it was a step and another way to look at cinema and documentary film and try to structure things differently. So for us, Malditos is like a starting point for, and we needed that after many years working. We needed a change, and that has been the opportunity to have it. And I'm surprised listening. I love it because we are listening to very, very strong stories. And as Daniel said, we are looking forward to watch all the movies. And I think it's, at the beginning, it's like difficult to enter in the QnA with other subjects. But of course, the first thing we will do is to enter the festival and watch your films.
But I think it's great because I can imagine all of your films and and I just want to
and
say
it's surprising also that as we feel, no, because it's about performance arts and the subject we are dealing here is so strong and so interesting. Also, this kind of
mix.
Yes.
I must to say too that during the performance we didn't manipulate anything. I mean. A real competition, and we decided to shoot that real competition. So we didn't decide who
we didn't have a script. We did in this film, everything is, and for this reason also the 2 years of editing and trying to make it, I don't know how many rough cut, and
no, it was
have health issues like it was almost impossible to bear the stress to go there and to know what we were doing. Also, it's like it was very difficult to say what are we doing. We are not making a film. Yes, it's a film, but also it's performance. It's also dancing, and it's rough.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. For example, now they ask in Lisbon to show the film in an art gallery. So, okay.
In a dance festival.
In a dance festival, it's okay, but no, it's interesting. As Elena said, there are different levels, and every time you see the film, or we watch the film, we see different things. So. I hope
the audience too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Later on, please stay at where you are. I will explain more about how to see the film online later on before we close this session. Yeah. Now I'm moving on to Alex again. Alex. So I would like to give a space for you to if not a statement, maybe share what you're trying to express through this film and what kind of limitations or challenges and privileges maybe that you have during the production of this film.
Yeah, I was just writing about the challenges that I had with this film, and there were so many, so I'm going to skip that.
Yeah.
And I think I will just, because I think it means different things to different people. I think Filipinos would experience it or do experience it very differently from foreigners. I would say I like what someone told me, that she thinks it came from a place of grief, making this film. And I think now that I have processed it quite a while, it does come from that. It is, if there's a statement to it, this is grief. And perhaps just to an audience that is international, I would just, it's not a statement, but sort of a warning. And I hope that the film can serve as a warning that I personally did not see this coming from my country. I did not expect that we would devolve, into something like this. But this is what I learned about making this film, and actually and in a lot of places as well, that it's a very slippery slope to getting into this kind of a society, to have your home, your hometown being a killing field. So yes, may it serve as a warning for everyone else that we have to be careful of our democracy and these things that we should hold sacred.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it's I really appreciate your courage to share this this great story. Yeah, and I believe it resonates to all filmmakers' work here to a certain extent. And I mean, we're neighbors as well, Indonesia and Philippines. We're not that far, and
No.
it might come here as well. So who knows? I think it's a great way to express what you are dealing with now in Philippines. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I go to Machi. Yeah, again, it might sound a huge question, but I think it's just also important to let the viewers know about what you're trying to say. Of course, film is always like open for interpretations, but again, this is where you stand. This is your standpoint, and what kind of thoughts that you're trying to express or articulate through your film, apart from your limitations and privileges. Thank you.
To znowu wielkie pytanie, które jest o tym, co starasz się powiedzieć, jaka jest twoja pozycja, gdzie ty jesteś, jaki jest twój punkt widzenia i może jakie są twoje ograniczenia.
No to przede wszystkim nie chciałem narzucać żadnego swojego punktu widzenia i zależało mi, żeby zostawić pole do interpretacji widzom. I to była moja intencja, jak realizowałem ten film.
So Maciej is saying that, he didn't want to enforce any point of view or his own point of view. He would like the viewers to be the interpreters.
Przede wszystkim dla mnie jako filmowca było najtrudniejsze nie oceniać tego świata i spróbować zrozumieć tych ludzi, których filmuję.
And for him, the challenging part was try to deeply understand the world he's filming and not to judge it.
To, na czym mi zależało, to chyba próba przekazania tego, co sam odczułem. To może tak powiedz prościej, bo tak widzę, że łatwiej ci chyba po zdaniu tłumaczyć.
He tried to pass on his own thing.
Tak powiedziałeś, tak? Przede wszystkim zobaczyłem jakąś małą społeczność, która próbuje przetrwać na zgliszczach zniszczonego świata, zniszczonego imperium, konkretnie, imperium sowieckiego, tak?
And the main message is about seeing the small society that tries to survive on what is left from the fallen empire.
Pomyślałem, że jest to jakaś wizja trochę apokaliptycznego świata, tylko w takiej małej, no nie wiem, przez lupę, jakby powiększona w kropli wody. Trochę taki obraz świata, o który się boję, że może będzie wyglądał.
So it is a vision of an apocalyptic world seen in this micro level or micro scale, and Maciej is worried that our whole world can look like that.
Bo boję się, że gdzieś nasz świat stąpa po jakiejś takiej niebezpiecznej krawędzi i bardzo niewiele brakuje, żeby z tej krawędzi spaść. Co zresztą ten czas teraz pandemii pokazuje, jak jednak nawet maleńkie, mikroskopijne, nie wiem, zagrożenie potrafi zaburzyć cały nasz system, który był taki trwały. Mówię o pandemii i o jakichś mikroorganizmach, które potrafią nas tak przestraszyć.
So,
Dobrze. To...
so the world that he is showing and he is fearing about is on the edge. It is close to disappear, and it might be interpolated on the. It might be interpolated globally, because as we can see now in our times in the pandemic, some micro-scale threats and microorganisms that we cannot see, they have threatened all the system and they have frightened all of us.
I na koniec mam tylko nadzieję, że widzowie, oglądając nasze obrazy filmu Wieloryb z Lorino, no gdzieś nie odniesie tego tylko do tej małej jednej Czukocji, gdzieś odległego krańca świata, tylko że trochę pomyśli o swoim świecie, o świecie dookoła nas, dookoła siebie. No, to byłoby moja największa radość.
Maciej hopes that the viewers will not see his film as a story about this peripheral village, but as a story that has something to do with our world and with world as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Machi, for sharing that. Now, Daniel, the last film, Yugong, would you like to say something about the what you're trying to say through this film, and what are your limitations and privileges?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I can add anything substantial to what I've said before about the question of the fragments, the question of the contradictions that on a global level we have to deal with. And I think I can very much align with what Alex said, that we have to be careful and we have to be aware of situations of transformation, because situation of transformation of global powers and global systems always bring about opportunities, but and opportunities need to be designed and worked on. The problem is that there are powers at work in this transformation process that are much bigger than us filmmakers, of course. I'm not 100% sure if the new powers are so much better than the old ones in their way of being asymmetric and exerting power and exerting geostrategies and so on. And on that level, I mean, on a very small scale level as a filmmaker, I can think about how I want to tell a story, or how I can express that we should be very careful with packing a certain very complex situation into a simple story. But of course, on a broader level, on a political awareness around the globe, without being too broad right now, I think there are some things going on right now that could change the paradigms of the way we live together fundamentally. I mean, we all know we are speaking here English with each other, which is not the native language of any of us, I suppose, which is a colonial language. And let's see in what language in 100 years these kind of Q&As will be led, if there are any film festivals left from then. I didn't want to end up with a pessimistic comment, but so yeah, let's work on it. Let's make this world a better place. Oh my God, I'm quoting even Michael Jackson. Terrible.
Yeah, I think that's a good closing. I mean, it's not necessarily pessimistic, but I think it also indicated the care, the awareness of your own reality or limitation. I think that's really important, and that also mark the end of our session. And I would like to thank to all filmmakers. Anja Esteban, thank you so much. Alex, thank you so much for your time and energy. Machi, thank you so much for your time and energy. Daniel, thank you so much. interesting talk, and especially to Anna, who has translated the Mach's words. Thank you so much. And thank you. And congratulations for your for the selection in the Festival Film Dokumenter. We really appreciate your work. And just to close, if you would like to see the film, you could also go actually to ffd.or.id, and somehow it's a bit confusing. I'm aware of that. You could just go to the ways of watching or the ways of seeing. So in that column, you could see more steps for watching the film. So basically so this is like registration. So once you register your account, you have certain time to watch it. Otherwise, you lose the time. So make sure that you have already spent some time to watch the film that you desire to watch. So, but if you have any questions, comments, or anything, feel free to let us know. And we really welcome your feedback for this session. And having said that, thank you very much once again. I really appreciate your time and energy for this session. So enjoy the rest of your day. This is good afternoon, I don't know, good morning, or somewhere in Berlin now. Yeah. So
Morning.
morning, yeah. Okay, so I think that's the end of our session. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to
very
talk
much.
with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so the technician, the part of the program has just mentioned that please visit our website ffd.or.id. So
We will.
yeah. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.